Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this Monday edition of Ask the Theologian. I'm Dr. Randy White, back where we're off last week. Thanks for allowing me to take a little week off of vacation, off to see the family. But here we are, ready to go, ready to take your biblical, theological, and worldview questions. The good news is we've got a full week of broadcasting this week. Had 2 yesterday. We'll have 5 Ask the Theologians. We'll have a Wednesday night. We're going to study the life of Silas, Paul and Silas. And the Thursday night, we'll be back into Proverbs. Hey, something for Thursday night you can do for me. And if you want, just go to askthetheologian.com for this and use the Ask a Question button. I won't put them on the program here. I'll save them for Thursday night. And all you need to do is mention a proverb between Proverbs 10 and 29. Chapter 10, chapter 29. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many you want to give me, and say, I'd like to know about that one. That one is of interest to me. And we'll include it in our Thursday night study as we learn how to take those nearly 600 maxims that are given in Proverbs 10 through 29. Check that out, askthetheologian.com, or email me, randy@randywhiteministries.org, and we'll use that for Thursday. And if you have a question, like Acts 20 Grace Believers already given today, put the word question in front of it. It helps me not to miss it. And of course, I don't want to miss your question. Or you can go to askthetheologian.com 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. By the way, if you put an email in there, I try to remember to send you an email saying what day we got to it, because sometimes there are some, I get behind, especially if I've been on vacation. But let's start out with the Acts 20 Grace Believer today, who has a question about Acts chapter 17, verse 31. Let me get there. The question is, what judgment do you think Acts 17:31 is referring to? Let's pull it up. Paul is speaking. He hath appointed a day in which he will judge the world in righteousness by that man whom he hath ordained, speaking of Christ, whereof he hath given assurance unto all men, in that he hath raised him from the dead. And when they heard of the resurrection of the dead, some mocked, others said, we will hear again of this matter. So the question is, what judgment are we talking about right here when he hath appointed a day in which he will judge the world? There are in, let's say, standard dispensationalism on this one. Amillennialism would not hold this view. Most others not in dispensationalism don't care because they don't divide much of anything. But within dispensationalism, whether it be Acts 2, mid-Acts, Acts 20, Acts 28, wherever it be, there are typically given a number of different judgments in the Bible. Often, it is the judgment seat of Christ, the judgment of the nations, and the great white throne judgment. Check for me, Luca, see if I missed any there. But I think that's a fairly typical among dispensationalism, those 3 judgments, the judgment seat of Christ, which many, I'm not going to go there, but many would put it at the rapture. Then the judgment of the nations, which I had a lesson on this just yesterday in our little bit of this, little bit of that series. The judgment of the nations, which they put at the second coming. I think it's put there correctly, but I would disagree about the nature of that judgment. And then the great white throne judgment. Okay, so which one is this? Or is it a different one altogether? There is a challenge in that when we begin to systematize something, we begin to put it into a formula and we get it on a chart, then we're convinced our chart is right, and we read our chart eisegetically, we read it into the passages of Scripture rather than letting those Scriptures speak to us. Now, I think that there is a good argument for any time you see a day, there is this day. Doing some research in my own notes here. Somewhere I have done a little study on that issue of the day and the way that comes across there. And if you run across, I was looking to see if I could point to where that is, but if you run across a particular day that is not specified much, this one's specified a little bit, but not much. If you run across this, then what you discover is that is always the judgment day that comes after the tribulation at the second coming. I think that little, let's call it the day rule. I should solidify this. I tell you what, go ahead and put it on our list. I may have done it before, and if so, I'll just find it. Let's solidify that an ominous day without any kind of real designation is always going to be that second coming day, that judgment at the second coming. So we got a couple of things going here. There is a judgment. He is going to judge the world in righteousness by that man. Christ will be the standard, and they will be judged in righteousness. Now, this is a judgment of the world, and it is on this day. I think we've got to be talking about the second coming here. At the second coming, there will be a judgment. Matthew 25 tells us part of that judgment, but not the whole thing. Matthew 25 tells us the Jewish part of the judgment, and that's where I spoke just yesterday in a little bit of this and a little bit of that on the Matthew 25 Judgment of the Nations presentation. So I think when it all comes down to it, we come to this day, this particular day is the judgment seat of Christ day, and therefore, we've got it. Now, I don't think, going back to earlier, did we find any other judgments? The day of Christ, the judgment of the nations, so-called, and the great white throne? Okay, the Bema seat is typically, depending on where your interpretation is, the Bema seat judgment is typically in one of those. Usually in the first one, the judgment seat of Christ, the Bema seat. By the way, you want to know a little toilet humor? There is a toilet company named Bema. They got smart with their Greek. And every time I go to one of those toilets that says Bema, I'm like, this is a Christian company right here. But anyway, you've got the Bema, the judgment seat. The Greek word is Bema. The judgment seat of Christ. Typically it's there. Now, I think this has been misunderstood. I think the judgment seat of Christ and the Matthew 25 judgment of the Jews is the same judgment. And so you and I, believers in Christ, really are already judged. We are complete in Him. There is no judgment to be given. And our completeness is given as a gift, totally, from beginning to end. That means there's not even a judgment of works that is given. And the Bema seat judgment, or the judgment seat of Christ, is typically one of works. So basically, I take that one out of the equation. So let me again try to circle this plane and tell you what I've done. under typical circumstances, there's three judgments: the judgment seat of Christ, or the bema seat, the judgment of the nations, and then the great white throne judgment. Now, if, as I do, you take this first one out, that only leaves us with two, and then probably we're going to end up saying, hey, it looks more like this second coming judgment than it does the great white throne judgment. And the reason I say that, you could read the great white throne judgment into this. He has appointed a day at the end of the millennium in which he will judge the world. But there's two things that go against it. One is that use of that undefinable day, which always gets defined as the day of the second coming. And the second thing you have to go with is judge the world. He doesn't really judge the world. Most of the world has been judged by the time you get to the great white throne judgment. So you end up, by process of elimination, one, we have misread the bema seat. That is actually here in the middle. And two, there are two things that go against this one over here. So in a multiple choice, you end up scratching it off. And the only thing you've got out of A, B, and C, the only thing you've got is B, the judgment that takes place at the second coming, at the beginning of the kingdom in which he establishes it. Now, furthermore, you could perhaps, and maybe even strongly, you could argue that the great white throne judgment is still a mystery at this point, that it has not been revealed. The only judgment I think we would find, if we were to search the Old Testament scriptures and even the New Testament scriptures up to this point, the only judgment we're going to see is the judgment that takes place at the second coming. Certainly the Old Testament has this singular judgment. Paul is speaking in an Old Testament kind of way with this singular judgment. And so there you've got it. I appreciate it, Acts 20 Grace Believer. Thanks for the good question that you give to there. Okay, let's go to another question comes in this morning from Pastor Bays. Good to see you, and appreciate all your good work over at Shields and Arrows. What advice would you give to a pastor meeting with a married couple who's having many issues, including infidelity? Okay. The pastor gets these. They come to the pastor. One of the challenges is they tend to come when it's on the rocks. I mean, things are bad. She's already about to hit him with a cast iron frying pan, and things are struggling through here. I'm going to go on two ends here. One, I'm going to say, there's nothing that you can really say or do that's going to fix it, because you're not a miracle worker. You can help them analyze it a little bit, but they've analyzed it far more than you ever have or will in your 1 hour session with them. Or if you have them back, your 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, 6 hours, whatever they have already analyzed it pretty well. You can help them talk through some things, and sometimes verbalizing does help us to put it all together and say, hey, wait, I thought that was true until I said it, and then when I say it, it's like, oh, wait, I got to say this differently. So there's some benefit in getting them to talk through it. Very few times can you say, hey, one thing you're missing is if you would just put this into your life there, you would fix it. Now, I am not one that... I probably used to be, but I'm not one that today is just all that excited about saying, well, now you all just need to go and read your Bible, and you need to pray together, and you need to make sure that, you don't miss any church. You gotta come and be a part of it, because the Lord is going to bless you. My mic's falling off. There we go. Yeah, they got to have spiritual priorities. They got to have physical priorities. They got to have a desire, want to. Virtually every couple comes to a point where they get up and don't really like each other. And sometimes that goes off to a long way. And you got all sorts of these problems that you're going to fix. Now, so I would be upfront with them. I can't fix your problems. That's on one end. That almost sounds hopeless. But it doesn't have to sound hopeless, because on the other end, a pastor can say, now, whether a young pastor can say this or not, I don't know, but an old pastor can say, hey, I've seen a lot of cases that were worse than yours, and they made it, And I've seen a lot of cases that are better than yours, and they didn't make it. It really, in the end, comes to your decision. How are you going to deal with this? I have seen cases in which I would be like, nobody would ever forgive you of that for any reason whatsoever. And yet she forgave him or he forgave her, and they went on and had a wonderful relationship and encouraged others and were a blessing to others. So in the end, it comes down to, hey, what are you going to do about this? Well, do you want to fix this, or do you want to not want to fix it? Now, they do have, and Randy's comment here online gets into this. They have some things to consider, and one, people who are having marital problems and considering splitting or getting a divorce. One of the issues they have to realize is this doesn't solve all their problems. More often than not, they create a whole new set of problems. So, look, you can go to that unknown set of problems, or you can stick with this set of problems you've got. Now, I think you stood before God and everyone else and said, I do, till death do us part. Why don't you figure this out? You can make it work. You're adults. You can say, okay, I messed up here, and I didn't do that, and I should have done this, and I've changed. I think you're ugly now. I used to think you were beautiful. Now I think you're ugly. You used to be smart, and now you're dumb as an ox or a box of rocks. But I can learn to deal with this. We can find methods. And so somewhere, obviously, to make any relationship work, it's some give and take. And you have to say, hey, what am I willing to give and what am I willing to take? I would hope, and I think every couple really ultimately is better off here, barring some extremely unusual circumstances. Like abuse. Every couple is better off just saying, I'm going to figure out how to adjust my life to live with this reality. And, she can't cook. I thought she could cook. Goodness, she can't even heat green beans. Okay, learn to cook yourself, buddy. You can find ways to deal with it. So I would want to be somewhat blunt and direct. Now, let me warn you. An old guy like me can be more blunt and direct than a young guy like you. It comes across kind of arrogant. Who are you? What do you know? But for me, anyway, I think I would want to be somewhat direct to say, look, I can't fix your problems up front. I can help talk through them a little bit. I can help you verbalize them. I can give maybe a little bit of insight. But in the end, I'm going to go ahead and tell you now, in the end, it's going to be, what do you all want to do about this? Do you want to figure out a way to learn to live with each other? And you can. There are people who absolutely hated each other at one moment, and 2, 3, 4 years from down the road, they're in love with each other. We're weird, messed up people. We change a lot. So, hey, be forgiving, be gentle. This too shall pass. You can make it. And as Linda says, get a crock pot. Anybody can cook something in a crock pot. But Deb says, and good advice, it's really up to the couple to forgive and work it out. I wish I could do it for them. I wish I could tell them if they would read a proverb a day and say 10 Hail Marys full of grace, that grace would come upon them, pray the St. Jude prayer or something. I think I have a coin there I found in the pocket. I'm not Catholic. I wish I could give them a formula, but there's really not a formula. Do you want to work it out, or do you not want to work it out? You all are going to have to figure that out, how to do that. And if you want to work it out, there's some tough things, but hey, in the end, it's a lot better working that out than that other set of unknowns that is out there, all things being equal. Um, and I was thinking the same thing, Jerry. Stop it. Bob Newhart. Have him watch Bob Newhart. There you go. Stop it. you got to figure out, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to figure that out? It's a tough world. It's a world in which divorce is far more accepted than it ever was before. It's a world that struggles with 10,001 issues that couples, even when I got married in 1988, didn't have to deal with, and now we do, and I think we can give that a good word, Linda. Love has been touted as a feeling for generations, it seems, so that's all that people see that it is. See your marriage as a commitment. Now be committed to each other and go for it. It's a little bit like work. How many of you have had a job that maybe you loved your job, okay? But there was a day, a week, a month, a year in which you really didn't want to do it. But you had to do it. You were committed to do it. You had a contract, or you had bills to pay, you had an obligation, whatever. If you didn't do this work, you'd have to do that work. I owe, so off to work I go. It's a commitment. Whether you love your job or you don't love your job, you go do your job. And sometimes you do your job just because you force yourself to do it. And this is true even for preachers. I got to preach today, so what am I going to preach? I got to do something. Figure it out. So that kind of commitment, saying, "Hey, I'm out there. I'm going to do it." Help them with a little bit of that, and then in the end, really they are going to have to make the choice themselves. And unfortunately, it does take two to tango. They both have to make the choice. Maybe you can encourage them. Just show them this video if you want. Say, "Hey, I don't have anything to say to you, but here's an old guy. Listen to him." Let's move on and go back to a follow-up. Acts 20 believer, Grace believer says, I was wondering if the Acts 17:31 could refer to the entire 1,000-year reign. Since Christ will be ruling all the nations at that time. Okay, this is one of the things that I kind of hinted on a little bit, but didn't actually say it. And that is, or I didn't say it in these words. I did kind of say it. We get our chart, and then we read according to our chart. So here I gave these three. I eliminated one of them, and then I had two, and then I read my two chart. But here's a guy who comes and says, wait. Does this have to be one of those two? Can I have an other? That's what I'd like, an other. And his other in this multiple choice question is, could it be the 1,000-year reign? So he has appointed a day. Now this is referring to the millennial day, in which he will judge the world in righteousness by that man whom he hath ordained, the Messiah. Whereof he hath given assurance unto all men, and that he raised him from the dead. So the resurrection from the dead here is this, shall we call it a down payment? For the time in which all the world will be judged in righteousness. Now, I think you do have a decent premise there. Luca, look up for me if you don't mind. Are there passages in which we can support the concept of the millennial day? I think it would be weak, but a day is 1,000 years. 1,000 years is a day. I wouldn't personally use that one, but my premise earlier was you've got an unspecified day is that day of judgment. But the day of the Lord, is that a 24-hour period? Or is it more broad than that? You got anything for us, Luca? Let's try. Oh, that is, okay, 1,000 years is a day. Psalm 94. Is there a particular verse or the whole? Psalm 90, verse 4. Okay. And it's similar. 1,000 years in thy sight are but as yesterday when it's past, and as a watch in the night. Again, I would probably put both of those to being more, I don't know, poetic, metaphorical. But if you were just to take a list of the passages on the day of the Lord and try to read every one of those passages as a 24-hour day, you might build a really good case to say you can't do it. The day of the Lord has to be bigger. So can the day of the Lord not only be the great and terrible day of the Lord, but it can be the entire reign of the Lord, if you will, from his wrath and his immediate judgment at the Bema seat, going on through. So I think what you've got is, yes, on this follow-up, yes, you could interpret it that way. I don't think there's anything that's going to prohibit it. You could, but it's not the most natural reading. I often take that, which is not the most natural reading. So go for it. But we do have to realize if we're going to take it as that which is not the most natural reading, that the burden of proof is upon us. And so we need to build a pretty good case to do it. Now, one of the things I would ask, and you've probably thought through this, is why do I want it to be this way? Why do I want this to refer to the entire millennium in Acts 17:31? What does that overcome? Often, even like in my Matthew 25 presentation yesterday, there's some issues that the standard interpretation brings that I want to try to solve. I'm not comfortable with those issues. So let's go here. That solves this set of problems. Might cause another one, but it solves this set of problems. Why do I want it to be that way? Does it support some other theory? The danger is, am I too eager to go there because I want to take care of this other thing? So what's the motivation in not taking this as one of those more standard judgment days? That could be an interesting conversation in your own mind, if not here, to see what we do with that and how that ends up coming about there. You might also say sometimes, let's say, okay, the Acts 20 grace believer says this is the millennial day, and we have no firm argument against it, so take it as the millennial day if you want. Does it make any difference? My guess is it does somewhere. What difference is that? I'm trying to put that. So again, I think grammatically you're going to find you probably could take it as the entire 1,000-year reign. What does that do? How does that solve our problem? What problem does it solve? What problem does it create? Excellent thinking, however, in questioning the assumptions. Very good. Going back to that marriage issue, Lisa says, Pastor Adrian Rogers says something like, it's not your love that sustains your marriage, but your marriage that sustains your love. Ah, that's a good Rogerism, isn't it? Or Adrianism, I think those were called. Yeah, your marriage sustains your love. You're married. And that used to be far more common, is that the marriage trumped everything. You got the marriage covenant, the marriage agreement. There it was. It's going to cost you a gazillion to get out of it. Not only, back in the day, not only was it going to cost you a lot of money to get out of it, and still perhaps today it does, but also it's going to cost you a lot of shame to get out of it. Now, the shame part of it has almost completely gone away in our society today. Thank you. Bring up someone said, got a nephew that's going through the beginning of a split. My advice to him was date the mother-in-law a few years and don't fall in love with an evangelical next time. You know, they always turn out like their mother. You're exactly right. There was never an exception. Even when they say, I am never going to be like my mother, they always turn out like their mother. Sorry, I'm offending all the ladies and the mothers in the room. And don't fall in love with an evangelical. Well, that's, choose based upon some good... you're exactly right, Jay. My only advice would be to discover and explain right division prior to marriage. The big challenge for many of my audience is they didn't know about any of this when they got married, and then they come into, and then it becomes challenging to deal with that. Okay, I'm dancing around here, but Cash gives a good word here. Hosea. This has to do with the day issue. Jumping back to the judgment. Yeah. Okay. After 2 days he will revive us. In the third day he will raise us up, and we shall live in his sight. Now, I would say the most common interpretation of that is a little bit more metaphorical. When I studied Hosea, I did... let's see here. I'm going to pull up this screen here where we can see this a little bit and go to Worshipify and Hosea. Hosea 6:2. If you just go down here, yes, it's session 10 of Hosea 6:2. And okay, unfortunately, I don't have notes here on this particular one. But I do, yeah, you can, oh, look, there I'm talking about it right there, after 2 days. I suspect that if that's about the 35-minute mark, it probably starts, no, excuse me, it's about the 13-minute mark, somewhere in there, of session 10 of Hosea, rightly divided. I suspect that if you, let me stop that there. I suspect that if you go and listen to what I said, I presented that, hey, you can take this as metaphorical days, but I think there's a good sense in which you can also take that as a 24-hour day. Therefore, again, to get back over here, he's literally saying after 2 days, he will revive us. In the third day, he will raise us up. And that it becomes a chronological issue for the end times in a more literal way. Okay, so There you go. Hey, on metaphor, that helps, Jay. You know, a day is 1,000 years. Well, 5 minutes can be as 1,000 years, too. Especially if you're, you know, living with a nagging wife. 5 years is as 1,000 years. I'm going to get myself in trouble if I don't move on. Jerry says couples often lose sight of the many blessings they have and focus on the problems more than the solutions. Then they get stuck in a mental slump and do nothing to fix things. Try a little gratitude. That's a very good word right there. You know, be thankful for the things you like. Enjoy the things that you can enjoy doing together. Figure out the rest. Thank you for that. Let's jump back into some more questions. Here's one that comes in this morning. Is it true that the Bible talks about people in hell alive? I am going to say it is not true, it is implied. Maybe we should put that, it is not explicit, it is implied. So let's see if we can find some of the implications that we get there. Conscious eternal torment, it is sometimes called. Now, we could go, of course, the simplest one would be to go to the story of the rich man and Lazarus, which in the King James, but you need to understand why they use this word. In the King James, it does use the word hell. In hell, he lift up his eyes being in torment. Seeth Abraham afar off and Lazarus in his bosom. This is where we get the phrase Abraham's bosom. Hell in 1611 didn't have the narrow focus it has today. I think we could even say it had much more the focus of the Old Testament word Sheol, in the beyond. So it certainly talks about a life, and in this case, a conscious torment. But when you ask the question about hell, we're talking. Is it true that the Bible talks about people alive in hell? Well, here it's people alive in Sheol. It does. Now let's add to that. Let's go to Revelation chapter 20, verse 10. And we get the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever. Now, again, this is not people, and somebody could argue, no. We're talking about people. We're not talking about the beast. We're not talking about the false prophet. We're not talking about the devil. Now, some of this would depend on your interpretation of the beast and the false prophet. If you take them as normal human beings, which most people would, not everybody, and there's a sense in which you could say the false prophet, the beast, the Antichrist, is the incarnation of Satan. So if you do that, you still have to deal with the false prophet. Is he human or not human? But assuming the Antichrist and the false prophet are human, by the time you get to Revelation chapter 20:10, the beast and the false prophet, these human beast and false prophet, have been in the lake of fire. Now that's the legit hell. They have been there for 1,000 years already because they got there in Revelation 19. This is Revelation 20:10. So you could interpret that where the human who was the beast and the false prophet, the humans that were beast and false prophet, have been for 1,000 years and they are there. Now the devil goes there and shall be tormented. Look this up for me, Luca. Revelation 20:10, the verb shall be tormented. Is that singular or plural? I assume it's singular and just talking about the devil, but we need to check this out. That's probably the closest one we've got. Maybe let's look at a few more in Revelation. We could go, well, if we back up a little bit and go to Revelation 14. The same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture unto the cup of his indignation. He shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of his holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. Okay, it doesn't really guide us too much there. You've got some of the ideas like in Isaiah and in Matthew of the place where the worm shall not die and the fire is not quenched. Which would, I think you could say, would give some insight into it. But I think, yeah, okay, Deb brings that up. Isaiah 66:24, the worm shall not die. To really come down explicitly to your question. Now, what I mean by explicitly is there's no argument against it. It's right there in the text, states it clearly. Here are people alive and talking in hell, having eternal conscious torment. I would say the Bible does not explicitly teach that. However, there's a lot of things the Bible does not explicitly teach that we absolutely hold firmly. And I think that to say the Bible does not explicitly teach eternal conscious torment, therefore there is no eternal conscious torment, is the worst kind of logic that you can bring. I think we have to say, okay, here's all the things that we can put together, the evidence. And you got so much circumstantial evidence that probably, even before the ladies and gentlemen of the jury in a criminal trial, you could say, everything so speaks to this that we, the jury, cannot come up with any other conclusion than eternal conscious torment. I think the argument is pretty strong. So I think we can do this without an explicit testimony. For example, let me give another example. I hold to a pre-tribulational, premillennial rapture. And yet there's not a chapter and verse that teaches a pre-tribulational rapture. Not one that teaches a post-tribulational rapture. There's only a rapture. And then I have to put everything together and say, everything else is choked out. This is what I've got to go with. And I think that in the end, you end up with having to say, yeah, it's eternal conscious torment. Now, Deb brings up a related question on what is that worm anyway? The worm is not quenched. Let's go to... Oh, thank you, Oh, it is plural. Shall be tortured. Okay, back. Thanks for interrupting. I asked Luca to look up earlier, shall be tortured day and night. It is plural. So if this is the most explicit testimony you can give. What was that again? Revelation 2010. Revelation 20:10. If you hold that the beast and or the false prophet are human, you have to answer the question, say, yes, there is explicit testimony, explicit example of eternal conscious torment. Now, then you could say, well, yeah, but they're especially bad. Other people, he's a little nicer. Then you just had to build your case there to say, some people are annihilated, some people are tormented forever, some people, just go to purgatory, whatever case you're going to build. And people have built all sorts of cases. But you just better have a good argument on there. That Isaiah 66:24, the worm shall not die. They shall go forth, look upon the carcasses of the men that have transgressed against me. Their worm shall not die. You got it interesting, their worm shall not die, neither shall their flesh be quenched. They shall be an abhorring unto all flesh. Now, in this particular one, it's speaking about some in the Battle of Armageddon, I believe, if I have my context right. But when Jesus uses it in Matthew, it is Matthew chapter 9, 44. It's much more, it's not talking about that millennial kind of, after the millennium begins, sort of that reminder that those people went up against us, Israel speaking. It is, I think it's a literal worm. But and it does give an idea of, hey, this is a body that keeps reproducing itself because it's decaying, it's being eaten, but it never is consumed. Much like giving the idea of this dying man who never dies. I think you've got a poetic picture here that's used a little bit in it. Almost like, I think of, was it Herod Agrippa that died being eaten by worms? And sorry that it's nearing lunchtime for some of you, but it's almost as if you got someone who's continually eaten by worms but never dies. There are a couple, I see in the comments, a couple different words for worm that are given. But I don't know that, there's a lot of, I don't know if there's any theological difference. You got this kind of worm or that kind of worm. One is, let's, again, sorry for the disgusting conversation, but you got a worm and a maggot. Okay. They're both yucky. And probably, well, I don't know. I guess they both eat dead stuff, right? so there it is. I hope that helps on that particular question. Thank you very much on the people alive in hell today. Let's go to Phil. Good to see you again. Let's see. My question is not about the doctrine of oneness in the 300 AD period with regards to the Godhead. I do believe in the triune persons. Phil asked a question before I went on vacation about a Trinitarian question, if I remember right. So here's the question. Do you believe it's possible for the persons of the Father and the Son to switch roles? That is, the person fulfilling the role as a son would fulfill the role as the father, and the person of the father fulfilled the role as the son. Okay, now let's lay down a few things here. First of all, this passage was, if you've seen the Father, you've seen the Son. That was what the original question was built upon. And would you find that passage for me just so I can make reference to it? So then we had the question, okay, of a unity, a triunity, or a Trinitarian kind of issue. Now, Phil says, okay, I believe in the triune persons. Let's go with a 3 persons of the Godhead. So not a Unitarian position. Therefore, you do have a Father and you do have a Son. For this case, we're going to set the Holy Spirit aside with apologies, but it doesn't come into the particular passage of Scripture, which is John 14:9. John 14:9. Jesus saith unto him, Have I been so long with you, and yet thou hast not known me, Philip? He that hath seen me hath seen the Father, and how sayest thou then, Show us the Father? Okay, so bringing then the concept, could it be that the Father and the Son, 2 distinct persons, could exchange roles? Is that the word that was used here? Let me check here. Is it possible for the person of the Father to switch roles? Yeah. Okay. So the Son has come, inhabited, I guess we would say, by the Son. But then he takes a break. The Father comes. And so when you're looking, are you looking, today he's the Son, today he's the Father, he's all Jesus of Nazareth? I think that the challenge there would be that my view anyway, and feel free to challenge this, my view is that the Son is eternally fixed in his nature as the fullness of the Godhead bodily. That is, the Son has always been in bodily form. Took on the form of a human, born, walking, a servant, obedient to the dead, but he's always had a body. The Father has never been a body. The Father has always been the soul. The heart, if you will. Not in the cardiovascular way of taking it, but in the center of our moral being, in terms of our own soul. The Father has always been that in the Trinity. And the Spirit has always been the breath, the verbalization, the Word of God. It's inspired by, it is the Word of the Spirit. So if you take it in terms of our makeup, and we are created in the image of God, so I think we got some credibility going here. If you take it in terms of our makeup, my soul cannot switch places with my body, nor can my spirit switch places with my soul. The spirit expresses the soul, the body houses the soul, perhaps is a good way to say this, and on all of them we're probably limited to some degree. But they can't switch places. It's either the spirit or the soul or the body. Now, if we are correct, this is an assumption. I think it's a decent one, but it is an assumption, and if it falls apart, the whole thing falls apart. If we are correct that our makeup of body, soul, and spirit is a reflection of the makeup of the Godhead, then you've got eternally Father, Son, Spirit, or body, soul, spirit, if you want to put it that way. Now, if you have seen me, you have seen my soul. They go together. They're part and parcel. They're not separated. And therefore, as I've said before on body, soul, spirit, if you invite me to lunch, I'm bringing the whole thing. Okay, I'm not just going to send my spirit to lunch. I'm not just going to send my soul to lunch. I'm not just going to send my body to lunch. The whole thing's going to go there. Therefore, I'm going to use bad illustration here for just a moment, but if you talk about me like the Trinity, then I've got the Son is this physical thing. I've got the Father, which is this spiritual center. I've got the Spirit, which is the breath and the verbalization, and maybe you could even say the movement to some extent, if you separate that bodily. And so you've seen one, you've seen it all. It's all so integrated that it cannot fully be divided. I think this is one of the places where our creedal Trinitarianism has almost tried to divide these too much, and we've done ourselves harm in doing so. So therefore, again, if the analogy is right, if our understanding, if indeed my body, soul, and spirit is a reflection completely of God, so I am made in the image of God, not just spiritually, but entirely. If that's true, my soul can't switch with my body, can't switch roles. Sometimes I am more soulish. Sometimes I'm more physical. But that's not a switching of roles. Maybe the one you first see, the one that's preeminent, the one that's, displaying itself at that point in whatever way things are displayed. But is really all of the same there. So because of that, I think I would give a negative to your question. Do you believe it's possible for the person of the Father and the Son to switch roles? That is, the person fulfilling the role of the Son would fulfill the role of the Father, and the person fulfilling the Father would fulfill the role of the Son. I would look at that and say, okay, the reason we want perhaps to say yes is because it does help make sense out of this. You see me, you've seen the Father. But I think there's another way of making sense in that they are so integrated, body, soul, and spirit, that you cannot see them separately. Now, Cash, again, who's been the giver of good comments today, has said, at death, we have separated our body, but at resurrection, we are reunited. So you and I guess only because we've seen death, have we seen the ability to separate these where the body is separated from the soul? And, the spirit, again, we could argue, has it gone off with the soul? Is it dead along with the body? We'll save that for another day. But nonetheless, that's the best we can do to saying they're separated. And when that happens, we say they're dead. And we look forward to the reuniting at the resurrection. Thanks, Phil. I appreciate that coming in on Ask the Theologian today. Okay, I've got I'm out of time, aren't I? And I've got more questions that we will get to tomorrow. I'll get to some of those that came in on my vacation, and some of your new questions as well. Let me remind you, because I want these for Thursday night. Go through Proverbs 10 through 29. Find the ones you say, there's a gotcha. There's a hard one. There's a difficult one. There's one I think we all misinterpret. And I'm going to put it through my Proverbs interpretive machine and see if it works. See if it comes out correctly. So find the ones that are hard to deal with. The ones that you say, Man, that reads like a promise, but man, that's not a promise for me. You figure those out. Send them to me. You can submit them at askthetheologian.com using the question button. Just put in, whatever proverb it is. And or you can send Randy at randywhiteministries.org, and we'll get those for Thursday night. Looking forward to a week-long broadcasting for you. Will be pleasant and joyful. And then, hey, let me also say to you that you could go, let's see here. If you go to randywhiteministries.org, click the events button right there to find the information about the 11th annual Labor Day Bible Conference and Retreat. There it is right there. And check that out. Well, let me say one more thing, while we're over time and I am advertising. Dispensationalpublishing.com. Right here, Life Under the Sun, Wisdom for the Temporary Dwelling. You can go and get this pre-publication offer. The book is not out yet, but you can get the weekly insights of the book. That is, each chapter comes along, and then when it all comes out, you get a personalized signed copy that will come out for you later this year. Go ahead and order it, and I'll send you, there's 4 chapters, 3 chapters, and 4th is almost done, and that'll be delivered to you, and we'll be ready to go. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. I do appreciate you, wherever it is you are. Hope you have a beautiful day, and you'll go to randywhiteministries.org. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll see you soon.